Hi, I'm Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and you found Wine, Women, and Writing Radio. We are part of the Authors on the Air Global Network, so we are solely owned and copyrighted. And I am excited today to have a real woman who kicks ass, writes books, has a fascinating background, and we're going to talk about some of her fiction and, as usual, the super authentic, complex female characters and the real life experiences they're based upon and how that translates into great fiction. I should also pull out the half-drink bottle of wine under the table, or maybe wine,
You're
women, and writing.
me.
We're just gonna go ahead and pass the bottle. But it's only 10 o'clock in the morning, so maybe we won't imbibe yet.
Not just yet.
Not just yet. Christina, welcome.
Wow, thank you for having me, Pam.
It's a lot of fun. I think we figured out here at Wild Deadwood Reads in South Dakota, where we ran into each other last night, I think we figured out after a "you look familiar" moment that we met nearly a year ago in Nashville.
Of all places. And now we're in, yes, South Dakota.
Of all places. Neither of us have any ties to Nashville.
Either place.
Or South Dakota, but here we are. And I think it's going to keep happening as I
think so.
Listen to our lineup of conferences. But Christina and I actually were at the same table in Nashville selling our books. And she first jumped out at me because I hadn't heard of her yet before. But one of her books was up for the Silver Falchion Award for Suspense, I believe. Suspense. Yes. And it's a terrific honor, especially for somebody that's just had two novels published at this point under this suspense thriller world. So I was impressed. I was like, she's got creds. So tell us about that. Tell us about you and what your journey and what brought you to writing these fabulous books.
Well, long story,
good.
But it started when I was 5 years old. I won a little prize in kindergarten, first grade for writing interesting stories. So I guess it's something that's always been there. I just always wanted to write. I loved to read. I just read voraciously, and that made me want to write books, novels. And in high school, I was in writers' workshops. I was on the school newspaper. I discovered journalism, and I knew that was what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a journalist. So that's what I became, was a journalist for newspapers, which are now kind of, almost like a vintage era.
But you were on the tail end, right? That was just like almost yesterday.
Yeah, almost yesterday. It's sad to say, very sad to see. But so I became a newspaper reporter, and that for 30 years, that's what I did. I was a foreign correspondent in South America for almost 10 years, and worked for the Miami Herald, the Associated Press, and I loved every minute of it. I really, really did.
Talk about finding interesting stories. I mean, to have that be your profession, where it's your job to go out and seek them out and touch them and feel them and bring them back and make them real for everyone else.
That's what I loved about it. I mean, I say, I interviewed everyone from bums to billionaires, prostitutes to presidents. And it was just true every day. I was just out learning a whole new thing, whether it was an industry or about someone or just social issues. I covered so many.
You've given me goosebumps.
And just, it was just fascinating all the time.
And sometimes dangerous.
Occasionally, yes. Occasionally, I got into situations that I kind of woke up and I said, "Oh, I shouldn't really be here." And,
sanctioned by the newspaper, or were they trying to say, "Keep it to a dull roar, Christina. We don't have to come fish you out of Bolivia"? Or
no, yeah. One time I was in, I had to pose as a nun to get into a jail in Caracas, Venezuela.
Nice,
because the Ministry of Prisons wouldn't let me in. They said, "We cannot assure your safety in this jail." It was known for, horrendous human rights violations. And I was doing a story for Human Rights Magazine. So I met this nun, Filipina nun, and we didn't dress in a habit or anything, but I went with her just as an American nun. And although I hated doing that, you're not supposed to lie about, your identity, who you are and what you're doing. It was the only way I was going to get in and firsthand see the conditions and stuff.
Right.
So it was a pretty
So they would respect a nun a little bit more than your average.
Yes.
You weren't guaranteed safety, but maybe a little better as a nun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I asked a lot of questions, and so some of the inmates were like, "Are you a reporter? Are you a periodista?" And I was like, "No, I'm just interested. I'm just, just gathering information."
And sign the Hail Marys, acts of contrition.
Yeah, they would show me the shanks, this long from a.
Oh my gosh!
They would, what do you call, file a bed leg,
Nice.
and down the back of their pants. And then they wanted to show me the wastewater things. We go down in this basement and there's this broken pipe and all this black agua negra, flowing out. And all of a sudden I thought, I shouldn't be here. I'm just alone with these two guys.
I could disappear forever.
Yeah, and
into
got
that.
This big shame. Like, let me just, let's go back upstairs.
It's the shank or the wastewater. Which way do you want to go? Up and out.
Up and out.
Oh man. Well, so from there, what made you give up the thrill of the hunt for the great story, or did you ever really give that up to move into writing in a different way, writing for between the covers of books?
Well, I've always loved fiction, and that was really what I wanted to do. My whole life was to write a novel, and I've written short stories on and off, while I was doing journalism. And then about, 2004, 2005, I really just got, for some reason, I stopped. I had rehabbed a house in Miami. And I just said, I'm going to write a book. So I just started writing, and I would get up about 5 o'clock every morning, and before I got my son up for school, and just start writing. And of course, that's the proverbial novel in the drawer that still hasn't seen light of day. But I did it, and I finished a novel. It took several attempts to try and get out of the journalistic sort of style and voice to get into fiction. And it's something I've had to work on to do that.
That must have been very ingrained, useful in some ways.
Extremely. I mean, totally a sync with many skills you need as a fiction writer. But the big thing that's missing in journalism, you cannot be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You have to tell the story right down the middle. You have to tell both sides. You don't use a lot of description. And, I tried to, always get as much stuff as I could in my feature writing and whatnot. But, you can use fairly minimal adjectives and description and that kind of thing. But so I had to kind of weed that out of my writing.
Yeah, and the never taking a side or being biased, but which is the antithesis of a protagonist and writing in a voice. So, but you seem to have worked those things out and emerged on the other side with some pretty good stuff.
As much as I love journalism, making stuff up is a lot more fun. It really is. You don't have to stick to the truth. I feel it's so freeing.
It is totally
totally liberating.
And you can start with whatever that interesting story is that you discovered. So the areas that you've gone into with fiction, I mean, I was most drawn to A Girl on the Brink, just because of my fascination with female relationships and protagonists. Although when I met Christina, the novel that was up for the award features a male protagonist, and it's
Skin of
Tattoos. I would say Tattoos on the Skin, but that's a bad title, and obviously not the title of your book, Skin of Tattoos. So, which also has some wonderful female characters in it, and pivotal female characters. But I was really drawn to, the plight of this teenage girl, and in what is essentially, how would you describe genre for Girl on the Brink?
It's a young adult novel. The protagonist is Chloe. She's 17, a high school senior, and it's what you call a contemporary social issue book in YA genres. It deals with dating violence and abusive relationships. It's loosely sort of inspired on something that I went through. And after going through this earthquake in my life, I just felt really strongly I wanted to write about it as a sort of a cautionary tale to teenage girls who are starting their dating lives, about sort of the red flags of an abusive relationship and what they are, because they can be very easily misinterpreted. And if you don't know what they are, nobody tells you what they are. That's the whole thing, is nobody really tells you or alerts you. So they can be very easily mistaken. So that's what I wrote. And
young girls are so, I find, I have 3 daughters, and so they're in love with being in love. And in that discovery of that feeling. So it's easy to trick them. the warning signs to them sometimes don't look like warning signs at all. There's something romantic. Or
yes, it's a whirlwind, you know, and they tend to, what abusive relationships start out as a whirlwind romance. The guy comes on very strong, very heavy, very, you know, insistent, and, you know, it can bowl you over. It does bowl you over. I mean, and not even just young girls. I mean, adult women. And
that's true.
You just get bowled over by it.
Well, I'm sorry that you went through that, but how wonderful for young girls and for all of us that you were able to take that and create this book with it. So, you know, to the extent you're comfortable, weave it together for us a little bit about how what you went through became Chloe, or how much of you is in Chloe.
Well, Chloe's an aspiring newspaper reporter, so well, she's a journalist.
There's a little Christina there.
A little bit, just a little bit. So she uses that skill actually to kind of defeat Kieran is the guy, and I set it in a fictional town in New Jersey where I went to high school, and called Indian Valley, and she meets this guy as she's being as a summer intern on a local newspaper. And so she's on an interview and she meets him. And that's how I met my abuser too, was on an interview kind of through he called the newsroom, on a story kind of thing in Miami. So, so then I just had to, you know, took it from there, and I include, even dialogue is actually the same, that, you know, things he would say to me.
Seared in your memory.
But I had to use, you know, totally different plot, but there are definitely similarities. And again, and in the end, she uses her newspaper skills, reporter skills, to kind of defeat his moves against her, without giving away too much of the plot.
But so even though she is of her age, she's a young girl, not yet mature, doesn't recognize the signs. By the end of the book, she's a strong character. She's freeing herself.
Yes, what I learned by going through all that, and you know, when you go through something like that and you emerge from the other side, you emerge just that much stronger. And so it was a real eye-opening experience for me. Just, you know, you go walk through the ring of fire and you come out the other side, and just that much more stronger, and, you know, willing, you know, I feel I can sort of take on anything at this point. I got through that. The rest of life is a piece of cake.
From just what I know of you, I believe that you've embodied that as you've tackled all these things that you do. You teach writing and you mentor writing with some, I want to say, some elements of our population that most people don't come into contact with every day.
Well, this is true.
So that takes guts and compassion. It's a beautiful combination. So with that, I'll let you tell everybody what that is.
I go into a prison. It's a maximum security prison in Los Angeles County. And I sort of mentor, really, creative writing inmates. Most of them are lifers, doing life for murder and other very long, very heavy sentences. It's just a wonderful experience. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done personally. It really is. And they are so appreciative of anyone coming in from the outside. Many of them don't get visits or anything like that. So they're just so appreciative and so grateful of someone coming in to spend time with them. They're very keenly aware that they have sort of been banished from society.
And they have stories needing to get out, sometimes therapeutically, I would imagine, but also really amazing stories.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty heartrending stories from their backgrounds. So I tell them, you know, write your truth, and that's what they do. So, you know, poems, story, you know, essays, that kind of thing. And I do think it's been very therapeutic, and it's been very rewarding to see them. Most of them are not even high school graduates. So to see their progress too, it's just been amazing.
And at least I'm of a believer, you know, may I be stricken down by everyone that has an MFA in literature, but I'm a believer that a good storyteller is a good storyteller. If you've got a story to tell, you can learn to get it out. And sometimes the authenticity comes from, limitations is the wrong word, but the background of the writer and the background of the storyteller, which doesn't have to be multi-degreed to have a heart and to really reach people. In fact, for other people that have walked in the same shoes as the people that you're working for, they probably wouldn't want to read a book by me. They'd probably a lot rather read anything written by somebody who's walked in their shoes.
Yeah, I mean, we all want to see ourselves in, reflected in pages of literature or even, newspaper or what have you. We all want to see ourselves, our own stories and lives reflected. So they really, I try and group them readings to that effect as well, things that they can read that relate to their lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's really what it's about, is finding just ways to tell their stories and giving voice to their stories, which is very underserved.
Yeah.
Part of the population.
And I also remember just from a conversation that we were having last night in the bar, that you take your skills in a totally different direction and work with people that are writing dissertations, that you do a lot of coaching with candidates for degrees who are putting together papers. So a totally different type of writing. We've got journalism, we've got creative writing in the prisons, we've got your novels and your nonfiction, and we've got you coaching dissertation candidates. You're just in your head. And
well, it's all about writing,
yeah,
and that's my passion, and that's what I've always done. And I do have to eat. So, and I don't, this is the thing.
Starving artist.
Yes, writing novels. So for, to make a living and to actually eat, I do editing of dissertations. I do public relations writing. I write corporate speeches, press releases, all that kind of stuff.
No writing is ever wasted, though. Every word that we
ever write goes into the mix.
It
really does. It all feeds into this sort of grinder in the brain, and it comes out. So,
with your girl on the brink, we talked about the relationship that she had with her abuser. Because we just started discussing this interview, I was picking it up and reading the beginning last night, but I did have to sleep. So are there other female relationships in the book that you feel strongly influenced Chloe on her journey, or was she just being too dominated by this?
Well, the one thing is in the background that sort of makes her vulnerable to Kieran is that her parents have split up. And so her mother has kind of checked out into a fog of pills, and she's sort of left, Chloe is sort of left taking care of her mother, and she's very worried about her mother.
Yeah.
Because her mother's taking, prescription pills and just kind of depressed. So that's another relationship arc in the story. And then, of course, the editor of the newspaper she's working for, Marion, is her coach, her journalism coach that teaches her these skills and encourages her and really supports her career aspirations.
I'm thinking of my 21-year-old daughter who dated an abuser in high school. If you're watching this, honey, I'm sorry I didn't use your name. And rough background, etc. And how much I wish she'd have read a book like this, because parents of girls, they're not talking to you. That these things that they think may be a little bit wrong, they're keeping to themselves. They don't want to face you, the one who thinks they do no wrong. And to encourage them to read this kind of fiction could be something that not only they get enjoyment out of, but that could save their lives. So I highly, highly encourage you, moms of teenage girls, to check out Girl on the Brink by Christina Hoag, which you can buy everywhere.
Amazon and the usual stuff, Barnes and Noble.
That's right.
.com, and it just released on audio too. If you like
demand good books. Demand your library and your bookstores provide this to you if you are not someone that likes to shop online. Now, I like to shop online, and in fact, I'm probably going to download on audio because that's my preferred method of reading. So, where can readers find Christina Hoag and her books?
Well, my website is christinahoag.com, and you can send them email to me through that. And, I speak at different conferences, book clubs, writing groups, all that kind of thing.
So you do not have to be in prison to get
No, you do not have
this
to be
is good.
It is very good.
We're not advocating that. Don't get yourself thrown in the pokey so that you can work with Christina. You can come to workshops and you can come to these different venues that you can find on her website. And now, what are you working on now?
It's another young adult novel, and this is going to be about, it's called Truth, and it's going to be about telling the truth. Is telling the truth always the right thing to do, and the price you pay for telling the truth.
Nice.
And there's a crime at the center of it, but it's not a whodunit, but there is a crime, and there's going to be another teenage girl protagonist grappling with this issue and what this telling the truth is going to cost her.
Influenced by a lifetime of teetering on the edge of who's telling you the truth and not in journalism.
Yeah, it's a very interesting subject, actually. I used to cover courts in Paterson, New Jersey, and as I was sitting in the courtroom one day covering some trial, probably a murder, I think it was just a sort of a garden variety stabbing murder, nothing too sensational. But
yeah, garden variety. That for Christina, that's garden variety. For the rest of us, that's like, ooh.
And but a parade of witnesses came on, and they all saw something different. And it all came down to a few seconds when the stabbing occurred. And it was amazing how many people saw something different and witnessed something different, remembered something different. And I sat there kind of remembering, thinking, what is the truth? Is truth an absolute, or is it a subjective thing like beauty? So it's an interesting question. We all remember things and where truth lies.
Right. And then have our own, reasons and perspectives for either why we filtered it differently or why we can't face it or tell it. Yes. So I think that sounds fascinating. And so for those of you that want to follow her journey and see when that comes out, how to pick it up, she's giving you her website. She's out there doing it every single day. Talk about kicking ass. I'm really impressed. I'm so glad that we've run into each other again and that you agreed to be on the show. And next time we'll do it where we can open the bottle of wine while we talk.
Yes, that'll be really interesting.
Note to self, schedule interviews after 5.
Yes.
So, and until next time, I'm Pamela Fagan Hutchins. This is Wine, Women, and Writing Radio, where we talk about great female characters and the real life experiences that they're based on. And you guys read some good books. And see you next time.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming.